Hello students, we are going to learn today about Kala, the art activity. Kala or art connotes making or doing, essentially indicating a human activity. Doing or making presupposes a doer or maker with one or more objects. Kalakar, Kal is indicative of time and also machine, and Kar means doing work with hands. There is an urge that arises in every man and animal. This urge is to create and communicate through the creation. But then there is a stark difference between the human and animal in their communication or expression. A bee can identify nectar and might communicate it to the other fellow bees, for example, but they cannot tell the direction by left or right turns. Human emotions are replete with sentiments of pathos, joy, sympathy, etc. Man relates to his surroundings and the society in which he is brought up. The art activity is dependent upon the faculties of mind, not in isolation from the surrounding environment. The five sense organs in the body, the eyes, nose, mouth, ears, the skin, help man to observe with keen perception. The five elements of nature help the artist to enhance the moments of realization or perception. This encourages him to understand not alone himself, but things around him and adjust to the world accordingly. At the outset, it would be essential to differentiate between the folk artist and the craftsman. They were understood as one in our traditional manner. The folk artist is generally a craftsman, and his activity is mainly the production of utility objects. Folk art has cumulative originality. He might treat his subject often with innovation. A noted art historian, Stella Kremrisch, has described two kinds of folk arts, time-bound and timeless. The latter are known to be repetitive and ritualistic. The folk artists have a lively imagination and keep their forms simple and bold. Heroes and heroines are more emphasized. The selection of color is essentially bright, shading too is eliminated, and flat filling of colors is done. There is seen an exaggeration of gesture and expression. Repetitive lines, dots, forms, colors is seen which emerges from the play of the subconscious mind and adds rhythm to the composed work. The folk artist takes no formal training but works through instinct. For example, a folk artist would use blue color, might not use blue color, but for an artist it will be totally different. A blue color can be used, it has no taboo on him for using a blue color. Jayappa Swami, a noted art historian, feels that the craftsman can make similar things over and over, though he can also be innovative now and then. For an artist, it is an essential binding on him to be creative and not to be repetitive. The Vishnu Dharmotram Puran and many other works by Vishnu Dharmotra says, briefly these are going to highlight the fundamentals on Indian art. What are essentially elements which need to be highlighted? Vishnu Dharmotram states clearly that to be able to appreciate painting, one must know the principles of Nritya, dance. For the understanding of the latter, one must know the art of Atodya or acting. To appreciate that, one must know the art of Geet, that is singing, and so on and so forth. The process in painting is more mental than physical. The first known woman artist in ancient art is understood as Chitralekha. Usha, she dreams. She tells Chitralekha about what dream she thinks of as Prince Anirudh, as a handsome young man, and she describes how he looks in her imagination, how handsome he is, describing each facial feature of his to Chitralekha, her friend, her Sakhi. In her description of what she had seen in her dream, the birth of Anirudh, the prince takes place with the mental concentration of Chitralekha. This particular artwork which is done is the first creative touch of the lady who works on the canvas, and a complete replica of Anirudh, Prince Anirudh, who had come in the dream of Usha, appears in front of the artist's canvas. The artist could interpret the dream through her forms and infuse the right content into the image. Thus came about the painting from not alone the imagination but also emotions and intellectual thought process. The creative imagination occupies an important role where the description of one end is reciprocated by rendering words into lines, colors and form on the other. Poet Kalidas in many of his kavyas refers to the basic mental image of how an artist would conceive a painting. Poet Kalidas in his Shakuntalam, Abhinyan Shakuntalam, was created by the mental Rupachaya of Brahma, who first drew her and subsequently endowed her with life. This infusing of life is what an artist does. Artist's creative endeavor and critics' appreciation is shown by Kalidas, where Dushyant is both a painter and a critic. Dushyant is in love with Shakuntala, and the image that he creates is through his imagination, and it's a replica of what Shakuntala looks like. This creative image of his inner vision is what an artist does on a canvas. He is known to paint her portrait from the reserves of his memory. The painting ought to have a living spark about it, which is the very secret of artistic process. To understand the word living spark, a few examples are to be quoted here. Students, it would be to understand them, it is interesting to look at these examples. For instance, the elephant here seen in bathing in a lotus pond as depicted in a mural, and a lion attacks it with the claws, taking it as real. A parrot is also shown talking to the images of men and women on the wall, taking them as real. It is so realistic, these images, it seems to the parrot as if he is in communication with these human forms. The Yakshini in Meghdut of Kalidas was supposed to be a painting, a mental portrait of her lord. In the separation of one ear, the kinds of moods she goes through, and the separation of the loved ones, where the Nayak and the Nayika are separated and are at different places, the mental portrait of the Lord that she draws is a replete example of how a creative activity is done, how a painting is made through imagination, and how that is transformed from the heart to the hand. And the mind also plays an equal and important role. The same idea is manifested in Malvik Agnimitram. When looking at the Nayika in life, the king felt that she looked even more charming than her image. Malvik Agnimitram, where Agnimitram looks at the portrait of Malvika and he feels as if she's more beautiful, more charming than her image. In Kamsutra, through the Shadang theory or 6 limbs of Indian art, the Rupabhed, the Praman, Lavanya, Yojnam, Bhav, the expressions that is given through the Varnika Bhang, the color schemes, are all highlighting how the artist has learnt but yet unlearnt all that he has learnt, and then he works on the canvas. This highlights the rendering of a painting. Same way, if we see through the Manasulasa text by Someshwara, defines it as an image in painting which follows the realism of a pratibimb, that is the reflection in the mirror. The image in the mirror or looking into the mirror, the Nayika when she looks at herself in the mirror, and the projection of the artist looking at the Nayika in the mirror is what is seen as a pratibimb. That image is the same, self-same as an artist feels within himself when he is creating art. Sthaviravali Charita too agrees to Adarsh Pratibimb. What is to be understood here is that painting is the way artist perceives the subject through his eyes, and with his keen perception and contemplation of the subject brings forth a work that has perfectly independent identity. It is not only the eyes for an artist which are important, but it is his heart, his mind, his complete system which flows with energy when he is creating a work of art. It might not be work of art at that stage, but when he is creating, it is giving in the best of what he has understood according to his perception. The society plays an important role, the cultural understanding also plays an important role, and the artist is working independent of his opinion. It is not learnt art, but it is his creativity that works in this. The work needs to give rise to ras, or a pleasant feeling. Ras actually means the taste, the swad, the anand, the ecstasy, the feeling of joy one feels, and that one who tastes only understands the meaning of ras. Ras is also similar to a taste on the tongue, and also the perceiving of the same element which is understood by the person who is going to depict the work on the canvas. Kalidas in Malvik Agnimitram calls Malvika's eyes as Nyan Madhu, which means honey for eyes, to attract Agnimitram. This is a special connection where Malvika and Agnimitram are in contact. This eye contact is very special, that is created in the painting. It could be maddening. Sudraka's Mrichakatika and Bhasa's Swapna Vasvadatam too emphasizes this aspect where the eyes meet, the Nayak and the Nayika are in eye contact, and there the exchange of love takes place. Creation is dynamic as it is beset with an urge to express. Communication is an important element in the theory of art, and the complexity of this element varies from art to art. In an art like music, communication has no independent status and is dependent upon the artist. If the artist stops singing, the music would come to an end. But the moment he walks out of the stage and he has sung a song, it leaves an impression for a while on the mind of the artist. But it is also again creativity. It is a similar feeling that an artist would feel while he is working on the canvas. In arts like painting and sculpture, it takes the form of an object and has an independent existence. Dramatic element in painting was derived by exaggerated postures, and the human figure was derived from idealized form. One has to be self-possessed for achieving the same. Meaning should be properly expressed by means of bodily postures, as is understood from the term Vapur Vishesh, which is taken from Kumar Sambhav. Kumar Sambhav is a text which relates to the love of Parvati and Shiv, where Kam is going to shoot an arrow of love on Shiv, and Shiv, opening his third eye, would destroy Kam. As is understood from the term Vapur Vishesh from Kumar Sambhav is a text which relates to Shiva's life, where Kam has shot an arrow of love and Shiv is opening his third eye and destroying Kam. Rati, the wife of Kam, comes to Parvati and asks her for the birth of Kam because she will be lonely otherwise, and Parvati promises that during the time of Vasant, Kam would come to life. And Roop Vishesh from Malvik Agnimitram again is a replete example of how texts play an important role in the mind of an artist. Both the communication in poetry and ordinary language are dependent on the spoken or written symbols. Removed from the stage drama too is a form of poetry. Only the stage part, Prayog, transforms Natak into Natya. Niharanjan Ray, a prolific writer, says the maker creates according to his world view of things, his inner desire, Kam, and his understanding of the nature and character of the object or objects. He is supposedly the one to discipline and organize things in a way that the produced object is neither solely him nor the material alone, but a third entity. Art activity would encompass the inert, inanimate matter like the words, lines, colors, surfaces, volumes, stone, wood, metal, etc., and animate beings like men and animals. Art activity therefore deals with the question of interrelationship of firstly subject and object, and secondly inert object and form. Subject and object are mutually dependent. The need for man to make art is because of the biological urge to create, that is Kam. Kam is the germinal seat of all creative activities. When man wishes to communicate his emotions, desires, feelings, passions, visions, dreams, ideas, images, etc. to his fellow beings, the creative side takes over. His communication is through words and sounds like music, poetry and literature, gestures and movements, dance and drama, lines, colors, surfaces, depths, volumes, tones, touch, etc. Sculpture, painting and architecture comes to life. The level of satiation should be at the level of one who creates it and the one who receives it as a spectator. What is being communicated must be meaningful. The communication need not be at the level of senses but must penetrate deep at the intrinsic level. The mode and manner of communication determines the form and the content of communication. The biological urge for communication is present in both animals and man. Man is differentiated from an animal by his faculties of physical and psychic properties and a conscious mind. Art is a moral activity of a social man and works for the improvement of the human species other than producing species of its kind. Art activity brings about order and discipline to the objects that are chaotic and disorganized. This semblance in day-to-day life adds rhythm and aesthetics in life. This is where the role of balance, harmony, rhythm, proportion, etc., which are referred to as the principles in art, is seen that enriches the human personality. Art does not in any way imitate nature. The artist does represent it in his own style, but copying is not what he does. The subject and object undergo a transformation, and it is not possible for the artist to imitate nature. The artist has a profound influence on his surroundings, society, nature, and that makes him take references for his representation. When we take a look at the artwork, this reference picked up by the artist makes it a part of social activity. Nature plays an important role in art. The Chitra Sutra, a very good example by Vishnu Dharmotram, refers to the ideal way of depiction of the sky, the clouds, mountains. The clouds which are represented are fluffy, full of water. Mountains are supposedly with conical forms or giving vermilion tones. Trees which are roundel in forms, ornamented. Water bodies which need to have fish and tortoise which jump, and movement has to be shown in water, a kind of rhythm. Land, birds, etc. The depiction of different seasons like Vasant Ritu ideally should include cuckoos, bees, blossoming trees, and the summer season to be shown with strong shades in the painting and animals resting under the shady trees. Water ponds to be shown nearly dried up and buffaloes with smeared mud on their legs. Now an example comes to mind of Pahari paintings where the legs of the animals are smeared with mud who are coming back home at dusk time, and the way they have been shown by the artists are with vermilion and red crimson hues on the legs. Chitrakala, Chitrasal and painted chambers are known to have existed in palaces from several literary text sources, several sources that show how the artist was known to the intricacies of depiction of each object in his painting. Vishnu Dharmotra observes in Chitra Sutra, if an artist can draw waves, flaming fire, smoke, flag, clouds, etc. moving in the wind, he is an expert painter. The master praises the line, while connoisseurs appreciate the bearing, and ladies like decoration, while the mass is carried away by colors. The classification of portrait into Vidya, Avidya and Rasa Chitra points the truths. A copy of nature like reflection in mirror is Vidya, an imagined form is Avidya, and the mere sight of it that evokes ras of Shringar is Rasachitra. The aesthetic experience, according to Nihar Ranjan Ray, a prolific writer, is the experience of intrinsic perception through intent, concentration, yog, dhyan to an object or situation. The levels of understanding may vary from person to person. Secondly, the active process of intent concentration is dependent upon complete detachment from practical action, complete disinterestedness from any practical ends of life, and certain kind of physical distancing. It is known to have the same quality of joy and delight arising of tasting the Brahman or of copulation of sexes. The experience is assumed to bring about certain psychical and physiological transformation in the perceiver. Ras experience is the quintessence of aesthetic experience. Bhav is the given state of being. Both are essential to understand the aesthetic experience. Aesthetic experience is an end in itself. It is no means to any further end. The acquiring of knowledge cannot be ruled out, and keen intrinsic perception is essential. The gaining of this aesthetic experience evokes the desire in the creative mind to share his experience with others and thus communicate these desires to others as part of the social structure. Aesthetic experience is based primarily on human emotions. It is essentially pleasurable, or it could give joy, mostly free from sensual elements. The aesthetic experience is a state of transcendental joy or state of self-fulfillment or sublimated emotions. It is not possible to conceive a form of beauty without some threads of emotional association. Yet the artistic emotions are distinct from the human emotions, and the two cannot be identical under any circumstance. Aesthetic pleasure is kind of psychophysical pleasure. Between the aesthetic experience and the making of the objective phase, a few points need to be kept in mind. The sensitivity of the perceiver is more heightened and sharpened than that of others. The personality that is directly dependent upon the social order in which he was brought up. Technical process, his ideas and visions, and his creative process. The process of articulation is long when an artist expands and deepens his imagination, evolves his technique, and clarifies his aesthetic vision. Once the artist achieves this, his creative imagination, the depth of his personality, his ideas, visions, images, etc. are enhanced with his skill and he objectifies them. The form is the shape that can be abstract, geometrical, or at random, enclosing some area, but ideas, visions, images, symbols, feelings, and emotions go to constitute the content of art. There is nature outside the mind of man. When the mind with sensibility perceives nature, it not only receives impression as in a mirror, but transforms according to his temperament. When this aesthetic sensibility becomes creative, such creation presupposes value. The end value, Parma Purusharth, is nothing less than moksha or emancipation. Dharma or moral good, arth or wealth, calm or pleasure. Human experience can be divided into three broad categories: sensual, mental, and intellectual. In Bhavabhuti's words, I cannot determine whether it is pleasure or pain, whether stupor or sleep, whether working of poison or intoxication. At every touch of thine, a certain sensation comes upon me, which stupefying all my senses, now bewilders my consciousness, now paralyzes it. Thus, aesthetic experience is defined as a complex experience, pleasant in essence, in which the emotional and intellectual elements are blended in subtle harmony. If we look at the animals depicted in the Indus Valley culture, we observe that they not alone appear as symbols, but are entities in real life, animated by and effusive of the inner life force. In the modern period, we find the lion back to back, which is infused with the energy of the artist. We can find the mane, which has been shown with those conglomerating forms, and that is infused with the energy of the artist. We also see a similar example in Sanskasya lion capital and at Lauriya Nandangarh. In the later Gupta period, we also find the similar examples where animals like makra and tortoise have been shown with the same energy. Their mass and volume surges from within, infused with the form and character of living organism. This very ancient belief gave rise to the concept of tortoise as a cosmogonic power identified with Prajapati, the creator or the avatar of Lord Vishnu. Vedic literature incorporates myths and legends relating to animals. The Rigvedic poet had revealed in his superb and inimitable manner of beauty of nature and man. The Brahman conceived the whole creation, a brilliant piece of divine manifestation of beauty. In conclusion, we would say that the large-scale technological industrial civilization of today had posed a problem to contemporary art activity. It is leading ultimately to alienation of souls and hence to dehumanization of art. But dehumanization of art is a negation. However, unsocial an artist may be, cannot escape being conditioned by the social order in which he finds himself. He is a connection between the tradition and inheritance, contemporary challenges and responses, dreams and visions. Art indeed is a reflection of the society and freedom exercised by the artist in projection of it with his sincere efforts. What needs to be understood in conclusion here is art does not grow in a vacuum. Art derives its inspiration from the culture, the society and the environment around him. And it is dependent upon the elements of art, that is line, form, color and texture, and also on the principles of art, as we have learnt. Principles of art, which are the harmony, rhythm, perspective one takes, proportions, foreshortening, and the elements which need to be forgotten. What is important to understand art is we learn to unlearn. And what is created at the end of it is an art activity, is the creation of the innermost expression, of telling the truth, what an artist feels from within and projects it on the canvas with his full heart and energy. Thank you.
you.